There is a clock in your mind, ticking, always ticking. But what if that tick is an illusion? What if the very thing we believe to be most fundamental, time itself, doesn't actually exist? Imagine a reality where every moment you've ever lived, and every one you ever will, are all happening at once, not in sequence but in simultaneity. This isn't mysticism, it's what some of the most cutting-edge physicists are beginning to whisper. What if the flow of time is a trick of consciousness, and reality is timeless? Please like and subscribe, because this journey will change how you see our place in the universe. Prepare yourselves. We begin. There's a rhythm you've never questioned. You wake, you breathe, you grow older, your memories form a chain behind you. Your future looms ahead like a mist you walk toward but never touch. Time. It's the silent god that rules everything. It drives your aging, your deadlines, your regrets. It orders the universe and anchors your sense of self. Without time, there would be no before, no after, no story. But what if time is an illusion? Not metaphorically, literally. What if it doesn't exist? Not in the fundamental equations, not in the scaffolding of reality, not even in the way the cosmos truly functions. Pause. That idea is more than unsettling. It is heretical, because time isn't just something we experience, it's something we are. Every thought you have, every movement you make, every heartbeat depends on the assumption that one moment leads to the next, that the arrow of time points forward, that we are being pulled along a river we didn't build and cannot resist. But physicists are now whispering a very different story, one that upends thousands of years of belief, a story in which time is not fundamental to the universe, but emergent, a property that arises under certain conditions, like temperature or color, a side effect of deeper, timeless processes. It's not a new idea. Philosophers have questioned time since time began. In the 5th century, St. Augustine confessed he didn't know what time was, even though he felt it intimately. Centuries later, Immanuel Kant declared that time wasn't something out there in the world. It was something the mind used to organize experience. But now, physics is catching up with philosophy. Look closely at the fundamental equations that govern the world: Newton's laws, Einstein's field equations, Schrödinger's wave function, and you'll notice something eerie. They don't require time. These laws describe a universe that is static, eternal, frozen in possibility. They describe how things are, not how they flow. There is no ticking clock hidden in their symbols, no arrow, no direction, no now. And yet, here you are, watching this video in a moment that feels undeniably now, listening in a sequence, word after word, frame after frame. Why? Because the illusion is perfect. Think about your memories. They are not stored like a timeline. They are patterns of neurons firing in your brain right now. Your past is a reconstruction. Your future is a projection. Only the present feels real. And even that is stitched together by perception, like a flipbook giving the illusion of motion. If you could step outside your mind, you might see the truth. That time is not flowing, you are. Consciousness is what moves. The brain doesn't record time, it invents it. It carves sequence from stillness. It stitches cause and effect onto a canvas of chaos. But underneath the stitching, there may be only the fabric, unchanging, eternal. Physicist Carlo Rovelli writes that the world is not a collection of things, it is a collection of events. But even these events, he suggests, may not be ordered by time. Instead, they are connected by relations, like a web, not a river. In other words, time might not be a line, it might be a cloud. You don't move through this cloud, you interpret it, you impose a story on it, like reading constellations in stars or melodies in notes. The mind seeks order, so it creates time. But what if we stop believing the story? That's when things get strange. Imagine a reality where the past and future are not separate zones, but coexisting states, like different locations on a map. Imagine your birth, your death, your deepest sorrow, and your greatest joy, all existing together, not waiting for each other, not unfolding, just there. You don't move through time, you navigate existence. Like a spotlight scanning a frozen stage, the play is already written. You just experience one frame at a time. That's what some interpretations of physics now suggest. And if they're right, then nothing really changes. The world isn't becoming, it is. But here's the paradox. We feel time, we measure it, we suffer under it. Clocks, calendars, aging, entropy. How can something so deeply embedded in life be an illusion? The answer may lie in scale. At human scales, time works. At cosmic or quantum scales, it falls apart. Down there, in the deep equations, things don't behave like hours or minutes or days. Particles exist in superpositions. Events have no clear sequence, cause and effect blur. And in some theories, like timeless quantum gravity, there is no time at all. Only relationships, only structure, no ticking. It's as if the universe itself doesn't care about time. We do, because we need it to survive, to act, to plan, to hope, to regret. Time is the canvas of meaning. Without it, there is no story, no arc, no redemption, no purpose. We become untethered, beings adrift in a sea with no current. And yet, if we listen closely to the science, a different story emerges, not one of despair, but of awakening. What if time isn't real, but meaning is? What if time is not the river, but the mirror? What if this illusion was never meant to imprison us, but to guide us? The universe may not move through time, but perhaps you do, not as a body, not even as a mind, but as a witness, a flame of awareness drifting through a frozen sea of stars and moments, illuminating one sliver at a time. And maybe, just maybe, the illusion was never meant to deceive you, but to protect you from the unbearable truth that everything is already here, and it always has been. For centuries, we lived inside a clockwork dream. The universe, once terrifying and unknowable, was tamed by mathematics, turned into a machine of gears and pendulums by the mind of Isaac Newton. To Newton, time was absolute, steady, and universal, a silent stage on which all things moved. Whether you stood in Paris or on the moon, time ticked the same. Seconds passed identically. The hands of the cosmic clock never trembled. In this vision, time was the ultimate background. You could not see it, you could not touch it, but it was always there, flowing equally for kings and beggars, for stones and stars. It needed no cause, it asked no questions, it just was. And for a while, it worked. Newton's laws could predict the arc of a cannonball, the swing of a pendulum, the orbit of a planet, all by assuming that time marched on at a constant pace. The world was a divine machine, and time was its heartbeat. For nearly 200 years, no one questioned it. But then came Einstein, and time began to wobble. In 1905, a young patent clerk looked at light and saw something impossible, that its speed never changed. No matter how fast you moved, light always outran you the same. That didn't fit inside Newton's universe. It tore it apart. To fix the contradiction, Einstein made a radical move. He untethered time from absoluteness. He made it relative. He showed that time and space are not separate threads, but one woven fabric. And if you move through space, you must bend time, speed up, slow down, stretch, compress. Like pulling on a blanket and watching the wrinkles move. Time was no longer universal. It was personal, subjective. A man on a mountain ages slower than his twin at sea level. A fast-moving rocket can experience a minute while a century passes on Earth. Time became malleable, local, dependent on velocity and gravity. In Einstein's universe, there is no single now. There is no master clock. Every observer carries their own time. Every point in space has its own tick, and what one person sees as simultaneous, another might see as sequence. This was not just a mathematical trick. It was real, verified, measured. GPS satellites orbiting Earth must adjust their clocks because they experience time differently than we do on the ground. Without Einstein's equations, your phone's location would be off by kilometers. Reality itself confirmed the madness. But with that madness came beauty. Because Einstein didn't just distort time, he reshaped reality. His equations showed that mass and energy bend spacetime like a planet bends a trampoline. And in that bend, time slows. This is why clocks tick slower near massive bodies, why time nearly halts near a black hole, why the cosmos is not flat, but curved by everything within it. This was a new kind of time, not absolute, not separate, but fused with space, a dimension, something that could be bent, sliced, navigated. And in this fusion, a new picture emerged, the block universe. In the block universe, the past, present, and future all exist at once. The universe is not something happening, it is something already happened. A four-dimensional structure where time is just another direction, like left or right. The flow of time, that's just your consciousness tracing a path through the block. Your now is just a coordinate, not a special one, just the one you're experiencing. Everything else the day you were born, the moment you die already exists, carved into space-time like ink on a page. Einstein himself believed this. He wrote to a grieving friend after the death of a colleague saying, "For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Imagine that, the man who redefined time telling us that it may not exist the way we think. But why does this matter? Why does it shake us? Because it turns time from a river into a landscape. You are not being pushed forward. You are simply located at a point in a static whole. All your choices, your triumphs, your regrets, they exist forever, unchanging, fixed in the geometry of space-time. You can't change the past because it's still there. You can't shape the future because it already is. Free will becomes foggy, memory becomes suspect, and death loses its finality because your moment of being never leaves the block. Of course, this view is not without controversy. Some physicists resist the block universe. They argue that time must flow, that becoming is real. But Einstein's equations don't require a flow. They describe a timeless, eternal structure. Change, in this view, is an illusion born from limited perspective, like a person watching a film frame by frame, unaware the whole reel already exists. Even more strange, relativity shows that different observers will disagree on the order of events. What one sees as before, another may see as after. There is no cosmic judge to say who is right. The universe allows all timelines, all nows, which means time, as we experience it, is not fundamental. It is observer-dependent, a shadow cast by motion and mass. So where does that leave Newton's ticking clock? Perhaps it was a good dream, a comforting simplification, but in the light of relativity, it cracks. The pendulum swings, but not for everyone equally. Time is not absolute. It is fractured, personal, molded by where you are and how fast you move. It is not a straight line, but a twisting thread woven into the very shape of space. And yet, this realization is not nihilistic. It is liberating, because it means the universe is far stranger and more beautiful than we ever imagined. It means we are not drifting through time. We are embedded in it, etched into the fabric of existence, not fleeting sparks, but immortal geometries. Time may not flow, but you remain, always, somewhere, forever. Imagine holding the universe in your hand like a crystal, a perfect structure. Unchanging, complete inside it are all the stars that ever lived, all the people who ever breathed, and every moment that has ever occurred, including this one, the one where you sit and wonder what comes next. But in the block universe, there is no next, no before, no after. There is only the whole. This is not fantasy. It is physics born from Einstein's theory of relativity, sharpened by logic and etched into the equations of space-time. What it tells us is unsettling. The future is not something that unfolds, it already exists, just as the past does, just as now does. Every moment is a coordinate on a four-dimensional map. And just like you can point to Paris or Tokyo, you can point to yesterday or tomorrow. You feel time flowing because you are trapped inside a mind that can only perceive one slice at a time, like a scanner moving through a photo album. You see the pictures one by one and mistake that sequence for motion. But the album is already printed and bound. This is the block universe, a model where spacetime is static, eternal, complete. In this model, nothing ever really happens. It all simply is. You were born, and that event will always exist. You died, and that moment too is eternal, frozen in place. Like a fossil in the fabric of the cosmos, there is no becoming, only being. There is no journey, only position. It sounds cold, but there is a strange kind of comfort here. Your greatest joys, your deepest pains, they do not vanish into nothing. They remain forever somewhere in the block, maybe even more real than your fleeting memory of them. Your life is not a flame that burns out. It is a pattern that always exists, carved into the geometry of existence. In the block universe, time is another dimension. You do not move through it any more than you move through height or width. You simply are at a particular location. What we call change is just the appearance of difference between two locations. In the block, what we call causality is the structure of connections within it. The past is not behind you, it is beside you. The future is not ahead, it is around the corner. Your entire life is a sculpture, not a song, and your consciousness is a spotlight, tracing over the shape, revealing one moment after the next, but never changing the sculpture itself. And yet this view is difficult to accept. It contradicts your intuition, your emotions, your sense of choice. How can you make decisions if the future already exists? How can anything matter if nothing ever changes? How can you be alive in the world that is already written? These questions are not new. Philosophers have wrestled with them for centuries, from Parmenides, who claimed change was an illusion, to Einstein, who calmly reassured a friend after death that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Modern physics does not resolve this conflict, it deepens it, because the block universe is not a fringe idea. It is the direct consequence of our best theory of space and time. If relativity is correct, then simultaneity is relative. There is no universal. Now, what is happening for you right now may already be in the past, for someone else, or not yet happened at all. And since every point in time is equally valid and equally real, the entire history of the universe must be thought of as existing in its totality. And if this is true, then our notion of time as something that flows must be abandoned. Time is not the driver of events. It is the arena in which they reside. It is not the melody, but the record, the observer, not the participant. You might ask then, where do we go when we die? In the block universe, the answer is nowhere, because you do not go. You exist forever. In every moment where you were alive, you are still a child laughing. You are still falling in love. You are still saying goodbye. All those scenes are still there, always there, stitched into the endless tapestry of space-time. What about the future? You have not yet lived that too. Is there already waiting not to unfold but to be revealed, to be scanned by your spotlight of awareness? But the path is fixed, every fork, every choice, every triumph and failure already etched into the block. You can no more rewrite it than you can rearrange the stars. And yet somehow that does not erase meaning, it enhances it. Your life is not a flame snuffed out by entropy. It is a constellation glowing eternally in the geometry of reality. You are not just a passing moment. You are a permanent structure, part of the cosmic design, a mosaic of moments lit by consciousness. But what is consciousness in such a universe? Is it something moving through the block, or something the block gives rise to? Is awareness a traveler or a trick, or both? These questions begin to blur the line between physics and philosophy, between science and speculation. But perhaps that is where the most profound truths hide, not in the equations, but in the spaces between them, not in the math, but in the mystery. In the block universe, nothing becomes everything, simply is. But in that, stillness is a paradox, a quiet that sings, a silence that shimmers, because if time does not exist, then neither does loss, and maybe not even death, not in the way we fear. It may be what we call the end is just a shift in location, a different page in the book, still there, always there, waiting for some version of you to arrive. So sit with that possibility, breathe with it, Let it change the way you see the past. Let it soften the urgency of the future. Let it ground you in the strange, radiant fact that this moment is eternal, not because it lasts forever, but because it never stopped existing. In the block universe, you are not moving through time, you are embedded in it, a sculpture in the stone of existence, lit from within by the candle of awareness. And that candle never goes out, it only moves its light from one facet to another. And all the while, the universe holds you in its timeless hands, not as something fleeting, but as something complete, already here, already whole, already real, forever. There is something strange hiding in the heart of reality, a tension, a contradiction, a mystery that refuses to resolve. You feel time moving forward like a river pulling you downstream, but the deeper you dive into the laws of physics, more that river begins to vanish. The equations of quantum mechanics, which govern the behavior of particles at the smallest scales, do not care about time's direction. They work just as well forward as backward they are. Time symmetric. If you reverse the motion of every particle in the universe and played reality in reverse, the math wouldn't flinch. It would still describe a valid universe. But that's not how you live your life. You remember yesterday, not tomorrow. You age in one direction. Not both. Your coffee cools down, but never spontaneously heats up. Your thoughts form in sequence, not in rewind. Why do you experience such a process? Clear arrow of time when the deepest laws of nature seem to be indifferent to it. This is one of the great paradoxes of modern physics, the disconnect between the microscopic world and the macroscopic world, the quantum realm and the human realm. Why does time appear to flow if the math says it doesn't? One answer comes from entropy, a measure of disorder in a system. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that entropy tends to increase over time. Things fall apart, they decay, they spread out, they grow less ordered. Over time, a hot cup of Dapio tea cools, a glass shatters but never reassembles, a building crumbles but never rebuilds itself. This increase of entropy is what gives us the arrow of time. The reason why the past feels different from the future, it's the only law of physics that introduces a direction. But even entropy is not absolute. It is statistical. It emerges from probability, from the fact that there are more disordered states than ordered ones. The universe didn't have to start in a low entropy state, but it did. And that's why we see time flowing from order to chaos. If it had started differently, we might experience time in reverse or not at all. So is entropy the cause of time, or just a symptom? Does time flow because entropy increases? Or does entropy increase because we believe in time? The questions begin to twist around each other like tangled threads with no clear beginning. In quantum mechanics, the situation becomes even more bizarre. Particles can exist in superpositions, multiple states at once. They can be entangled, influencing each other instantly, across vast distances. They can tunnel through barriers, appear to be in two places at once. Their behavior defies causality, and in some interpretations, time itself is not fundamental at all. It is emergent. It arises only when you observe the system, only when measurement occurs. This is the measurement problem, one of the most haunting puzzles in quantum theory. When does a quantum possibility become a real outcome? When does the waveform collapse and reality snap into place? The answer seems to involve observation, and with it, consciousness. But even deeper, it may involve time, or the lack of it, because in some formulations like the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, there is no time variable at all. Quantum gravity seems to erase time entirely. So if the universe, at its most fundamental level, has no time, and the equations that describe it don't need time, then where does time come from? And why does it feel so real? Some physicists believe that time emerges from entanglement, that the direction of time is encoded in the way quantum systems become entangled with their environment. As particles interact, they become linked and information spreads, and that spread creates a sense of direction, like the ripples on a pond hinting at where the pebble was dropped. Others propose that time is a byproduct of decoherence, the process by which quantum possibilities collapse into classical outcomes. When systems interact with their surroundings, they lose coherence, and become definite, and in doing so, they create the appearance of a flowing timeline. But that flow is not fundamental. It's a story told by complexity. What emerges is a picture of time as a kind of illusion, a pattern, a side effect of entropy, of observation, of memory of mind, of the universe may be a timeless structure, and you, a creature, evolved to navigate it by creating the fiction of flow. But this fiction is convincing. It is immersive. It is powerful. Your entire psychology is built on it. Your hopes, your regrets, your goals, your fears, they all rely on the assumption that time moves forward, that change is possible, that tomorrow is different from today. But if time is not fundamental, then what happens to those beliefs? It becomes possible that all moments exist already, and your sense of motion between them is just a narrative constructed by consciousness, a hallucination of continuity created by brains evolved to survive in a world of cause and effect. A calm, necessary illusion, one that helps us act but hides the truth. And what is the truth? That time may be symmetric, but your experience is not, that the laws allow reversal, but your mind insists on progress, that the quantum world is timeless, and your arrow of time is a ghost cast by entropy and mind. You are a being caught between two realms, the static elegance of quantum equations and the messy river of lived experience. You are the boundary between timeless laws and temporal stories, between being and becoming, between is and will be. In this light, the arrow of time is not a flaw or a trick, but a bridge. It connects the frozen truth beneath with the flowing dream above it, allows a timeless universe to host creatures who believe in past and future, who grow, who strive, who love, and who grieve. And maybe that was always the point, not to erase the illusion, but to understand it, not to escape time, but to glimpse beyond it. And in that glimpse to see not just how the universe works, but what it means to be a traveler in a world where time does not truly flow, but still feels like it does. Because even if the equations don't need time, even if particles dance without sequence, even if entropy is the only arrow we can trust, you are here now watching this moment unfold, feeling it breathe. And that experience may be the most real thing of all. Even in a timeless universe, there is a frontier in physics where everything we know begins to dissolve, a place where space is grainy and time is absent, where the smooth fabric of Einstein's spacetime shreds into quantum foam. This is the realm of quantum gravity, the unfinished bridge between general relativity and quantum mechanics. And here, in the deepest equations of reality, time simply disappears. It vanishes, not as a mistake, but as a necessity. In general relativity, time is a dimension curved by mass, a coordinate woven into the shape of the universe. In quantum mechanics, time is a parameter, an external ticking clock used to evolve systems from one state to another. But when we try to combine the two, we find that time cannot belong to both. It breaks the math, resists it. The universe itself seems to protest. And so in the formulations of quantum gravity, the clock is removed, and something stranger takes its place. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, one of the most famous equations in quantum cosmology, contains no time at all. It describes the entire wave function of the universe. But it does not evolve, it does not change, it simply is. It suggests a timeless cosmos, a whole, where every possibility already exists, encoded in a vast, multi-dimensional structure. This is not a universe unfolding in time. It is a universe being everything all at once. But if the fundamental equation describing reality has no time, then what does that say about everything you feel? What does that say about motion, about history, about becoming? What does it say about your birth or your death? Are they just fixed structures in a frozen landscape? A timeless architecture of possibility. In loop quantum gravity, another approach to quantum gravity, space is not continuous, but made of discrete loops woven together like a cosmic fabric. Space itself becomes quantized. And in this strange granular world, time does not flow because there is no background for it to flow through. Instead, change is defined relationally between these quantum chunks of geometry, and time is no longer a backdrop, but an emergent property, a pattern rising from a timeless dance of information. Physicist Carlo Rovelli describes this as a universe without time, where change still exists, but time does not. Where, instead of objects evolving through time, we only see correlations between different configurations. There is no clock ticking under the hood, only relationships between states we interpret as before and after, because that is how our minds work. This perspective shatters the notion of time as fundamental and replaces it with something more subtle, more haunting: the idea that time is not a thing but an illusion born from the entanglement of parts of the universe with other parts. That what we perceive as temporal flow is really just the process of one system becoming entangled with another, and in that entanglement, history emerges, like a shadow cast by measurement. In this view, there is no absolute now, only the illusion of sequence created by observation and memory. No universal heartbeat, only localized rhythms created by interaction. When nothing changes, we say, time has stopped. But what we mean is that nothing is being measured, nothing is being compared. So, what does it mean to exist in a universe without time? How do you live? How do you think? How do you love? In a world where nothing truly flows, perhaps it means that life is not a journey, but a structure, not a movie, but a mural, and you are not a traveler, but a node, a witness, a shimmering awareness, blinking in and out of moments already there. Quantum gravity tells us that time is not real, not in the way we think, and yet from this unreality arises everything we know: the sense of movement, the rhythm of breath, the march of age, the weight of memory, all of it emerging like a melody. From silence, a song from a frozen score. You might ask, how can anything happen in a timeless universe? How can stars form? How can people fall in love? How can anything change if time is not real? And the answer is that happening itself is a construct. Change is not something that unfolds, it is something that exists. Change is just the difference between one configuration and another, and time is the illusion we use to explain why those configurations feel like a story. From the perspective of quantum gravity, the universe is a tapestry. Every moment, every particle, every possible configuration, woven together in a single, timeless whole. What we call the present is just the slice. Our consciousness is currently entangled with what we call the future, is already there. What we call the past is still there. All of it humming silently in a song with no tempo. This is not easy to accept. It erodes the foundation of experience. It forces you to question the very nature of identity and motion, and yet it offers something astonishing: the idea that you are not ephemeral, not fleeting, but permanent, etched into the deepest structure of reality, like a thread in the quantum weave. And it brings with it a strange peace, because if time is not real, then endings are not final, and beginnings are not sudden. Everything you were, and everything you will be already exists, somewhere in the structure already formed, already shining. So when you ask, what time is quantum gravity replies, it is nothing and everything. It is the illusion that gives rise to meaning, the ghost that animates the machine, the rhythm that emerges from a silent song. And in that silence, in that timelessness, you exist not as a flicker, but as a facet of eternity, not passing through time, but held outside of it, not changing, but already complete, forever. You say now, and it feels real, it feels sharp, it feels alive this instant right here. This breath, this heartbeat, this flicker of attention. Surely this is the only thing that truly exists. The past is a memory, the future, a guess, but this, the moment, this present is yours. It is the stage upon which your entire reality stands. But what if now is just an illusion? What if the present does not exist at all? At least not in the way you think. Physics gives no special treatment to the present. The equations that describe the universe make no mention of. Now they treat all moments equally. The past, the future, and what we call the present are all coordinates in spacetime, none more real than the other. If you draw a line across a map, that line does not change. The place itself does not become more real just because your finger is touching it. And yet your consciousness insists that this point, this now, is privileged. It is central. But when you look deeper, Even neuroscience begins to betray the feeling of now the brain does not register events in real time. It constructs them after the fact, stitching them together from sensory input with delays of milliseconds or more. What you experience as the present is already in the past, filtered, refined, and rendered into a narrative. Your now is a reconstruction. It is a story told by billions of neurons, syncing their pulses to create the illusion of immediacy. Different senses move at different speeds. Your eyes are faster than your ears, your skin even slower, and yet you never notice the lag because the brain edits it all into a seamless stream. It buffers reality like a video loading just fast, enough to fool you into thinking it's live. And in that stream, the now becomes a window, a sliding frame, not a moment, but a span of moments, bundled together and perceived as singular. So where is now, really? Is it the edge of the future, the echo of the past, or just a trick of perception? Is it a location in space-time, or a process in the brain? Is there a universal now shared by all observers, or is every conscious being trapped in their own moving spotlight, lighting up their own slice of the block? Einstein's theory of relativity says, there is no universal now. Simultaneity is relative. Two events that appear to happen at the same time, for you may happen at different times, for someone else moving differently through space. And because no frame of reference is privileged, no, now is more correct than another. This destroys the idea of a single global present and replaces it with a landscape of overlapping perspectives, each with their own timeline, their own rhythm, their own now. In a very real sense, now is a local illusion, a product of position and speed and awareness. It is not a fact of the universe, but a feature of experience. You experience now because your brain demands it, because life requires it, because memory and action and identity all need a center, a ground, a here and now from which to build. But physics shows us that nothing in the universe needs now to exist, only you do. This might feel unsettling, the idea that your deepest sense of being is just a convenient hallucination. But there is something beautiful in it too, because it means that presence is not something given. It is something made, created moment by moment through perception and attention and choice. The present is not a container. It is a creation, a flame you hold in the darkness to make meaning out of stillness. And it may also mean that now is not a point but a span, a thickness, a sliver of time wide enough to hold the impression of continuity, wide enough to contain memory and expectation together. Because without memory there is no now, and without the sense of future, there is no self. The now is always tangled with what came before and what comes next. It is never clean, never pure, always a blend, always a blur. This is why meditative traditions have long spoken of the present as both everything and nothing. To be in the now is to be fully awake to the illusion, to see the flickering screen for what it is, not because it is fake, but because it is fragile and fleeting, and yet the only place from which awareness can bloom. In the absence of a universal now, we must ask what it means to be alive, not in time, but in this strange moving window of awareness. What it means to be conscious of a moment that does not truly exist outside the mind. Perhaps it means that the present is not a location, but a practice. Not something you find, but something you do over and over, moment by moment, breath by breath. And maybe that is the point, not to find the perfect now, but to participate in it, to shape it, to meet it with attention and presence, even if it is a mirage. Because within that mirage you live, you choose, you love, you create. And even if the physics denies its reality, the feeling of now is still the ground of every experience you have. The universe does not need a now to exist, but you do, and that may be enough to make it real, enough to give it meaning, enough to honor it with your presence, not as a fixed point in space-time, but as a living flame of consciousness, reaching into the timeless and calling it home. So ask yourself, what is this moment really? What are you inside it? Who are you without it? And what happens when you let go of the idea that now must be real to be beautiful? What if now is the name we give to the place where mind meets? Mystery, where time touches eternity. where illusion becomes awareness and awareness becomes light. And maybe, just maybe, that light is the only real thing there is. Time dies in strange places, and none are stranger than the edge of a black hole, a boundary where physics breaks and reality folds, a place where time itself begins to stretch like taffy until it stops altogether. A black hole is not just a monster of gravity. It is a laboratory for time, and what we see there changes everything we thought we knew. Imagine falling toward one. The stars are distant and dim. The light begins to shift. The colors fade. The pull grows stronger. Space itself curves around you, and time begins to slow. To those watching from far away, your descent appears to take forever. You freeze, just above the event horizon, locked in slow motion, as if caught in amber. But for you, the fall is smooth and quick. You pass the horizon without fanfare, without resistance, and inside something impossible happens. Time begins to die. This is the event horizon, the surface beyond which nothing escapes, not even light. It is not a place, it is a point of no return. And beyond it, the rules of time begin to unravel. From an outside perspective, time slows infinitely as you approach it. To an observer watching you fall, your clock nearly stops. They would never see you cross the horizon, only approach it slower and slower, frozen in time. But to you, time feels normal, until suddenly it doesn't, because inside a black hole the roles of space and time reverse. Time becomes space, and space becomes time, and you are no longer falling through space, you are falling through time. This is not metaphor, it is mathematics in general relativity. The equations show that inside the horizon, moving forward in time means moving inward toward the singularity, just like you cannot avoid moving through time in normal life. Inside a black hole, you cannot avoid moving toward the center. Your death is not a possibility, it is a destination locked into the geometry of space-time itself, and no amount of thrashing or thinking or hoping will change it. But what is the singularity? Really a point of infinite density, a place where all known laws of physics collapse, where our equations yield infinities and cease to make sense. It is the end of predictability, the edge of understanding, the place where time itself may cease to exist, not just slow, not just warp, but vanish. Because how can time persist in a place where space has no volume and gravity has no bounds? Black holes are where time and space go to die, but they are also where something new may be born. Because if time is distorted near massive objects, what does that say about the universe as a whole? Does the cosmos itself have horizons, edges, boundaries beyond which time behaves differently or not at all? Are we living inside a giant black hole or a bubble of space-time surrounded by mystery? The deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Black holes are not just destructive, they are creative. They radiate energy. They evaporate slowly over time through a process called Hawking radiation. And this raises new paradoxes. Where does the information go? What happens to the things that fall in if the black hole disappears and time with it? Does that mean the past is erased or encoded or preserved in some other form? These questions stretch across disciplines from quantum physics to thermodynamics to information theory, and all of them confront the same mystery. What happens to time in a place where time does not apply? What happens to memory, to sequence, to causality, when even the order of events becomes undefined? And yet, black holes may hold the answer, not because they are exotic, but because they are simple. Their equations are clean, their behavior predictable, their impact profound. They are natural consequences of Einstein's theory, and they appear to exist all across the universe, in every galaxy, at every scale, as if time's limits are not rare, but woven into the structure of everything. In the shadow of a black hole, time becomes a suggestion, not a rule, a conditional property that depends on where you are, how you move, and what you see. And if time can bend so close to breaking, then how real is it anywhere if clocks can tick slower in a gravitational field? What does that say about the clock in your mind, the timeline you live by, the aging you fear? You are already in a gravitational field. The Earth curves space-time, the Sun curves it more. Your time is already slower than it would be far from any mass. and yet you never notice because you are used to the illusion you are calibrated to. It the way fish do not notice water, and this raises a haunting possibility. What if time has already ended in some parts of the universe? What if there are regions where time no longer flows, where it curled into stillness like light behind an event horizon? And no signal can reach us from those places, not because they are gone, but because they are beyond time itself. In the end, black holes are not the death of curiosity. They are its furnace. They force us to question not just what time is, but whether it is needed at all. They reveal that time is not absolute, not sacred, not untouchable. It is fragile, local, conditional, and perhaps not even fundamental. And if time can die, then so can the fear of it, because what dies can be replaced, and what ends can be transcended. Maybe black holes are not tombstones, but tunnels, not erasers, but editors, not the end of time, but the beginning of something deeper, a reality not built on clocks and calendars, but on structure and relationship and consciousness. Perhaps the singularity is not a place, but a perspective, a vantage point where the illusion collapses, and you see what was always true, that time is not the engine of reality, but the echo of its dance, not the architect, but the brushstroke, not the master, but the myth. And in that myth you live and you learn and you let go, not of time, but of the need for it to be real. Because sometimes the death of time is the birth of understanding. Close your eyes and ask yourself what time really is, not in theory, not in equations, but in experience. Do you feel it as something outside or something within? Do you hear the ticking of a clock or the unfolding of a thought? Because if time does not exist in the fabric of the universe, then it must exist somewhere else, somewhere closer, somewhere stranger. Maybe it lives in the brain. The mind is a builder of stories, and time is its first illusion. It marks the passage of events. It arranges memories in sequence. It projects futures and recalls pasts. It spins a narrative from chaos, a thread of selfhood strung across a passage. Canyon of silence. Without that thread, what are you? Who are you? What happens when time disappears from the mind? You do not experience the world directly, you experience your brain's version of it. Filtered, delayed, organized. And one of the most astonishing tricks it plays is making time feel continuous. Your brain takes fragments of input arriving at different speeds, sounds slower than sight, touch slower still, and stitches them into a seamless present. You think now is a razor's edge, a single flash of being, but it's not. It's a composite, a smear of milliseconds collected, processed, and presented to you as a single cohesive moment. Your brain is not a passive recorder. It is a synchronizer, a conductor, balancing the timing of internal and external signals to maintain the illusion of flow. This illusion is so convincing that you live by it. You make plans, you feel nostalgia, you hope, you grieve, you heal, all because you believe in the passage of time. But the passage is not real. Only the belief is. When that belief breaks, so does your sense of self, and it can break in dreams, in trauma, in madness, and in altered states of consciousness. People who experience deep meditation, psychedelic journeys, or neurological damage often describe a suspension of time, a sense of eternity or timelessness, where the boundary between before and after dissolves, and what remains is pure awareness, a field without edges, a consciousness without clockwork. In these moments, some report feeling more alive, not less, more real, not less, as if time had always been a veil pulled across the rawness of being, and once lifted, the truth of existence is not sequence but presence, not motion but stillness, not becoming but being. The brain without time is not empty, it is free, and in that freedom, a new kind of perception arises, one not bound by chronology or causality, but open to pattern, rhythm, symmetry. It is as if the mind recognizes that the music it thought was linear is actually a chord, a harmony existing all at once. And when that realization comes, fear softens, urgency dissolves, and peace takes its place. But your daily life is built on the architecture of time, memory, identity, language. They all depend on the assumption of before and after you say I am. because you remember who you were and imagine who you will be. But if that thread were cut, would you vanish, or would you finally appear? Would the self dissolve or emerge? Would you lose the illusion or awaken from it? Neuroscience shows us that memory is not a recording, it is a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you change it slightly, reshape it, recontextualize it, fold it into the new, now you carry with you, and yet you trust these memories to define you, to prove that time is real. But what if they are just impressions, shadows of a self that only ever exists in this flickering moment that repeats itself endlessly in different forms? Your sense of time is built not just from memory but from rhythm, the heartbeat, the breath, the cycles of light and dark, the circadian clock ticking in every cell. You are a symphony of oscillations, a creature tuned to cycles, but those cycles are not time, they are change, and change is not time either. It is difference, motion, contrast, the dance of pattern over structure, and the mind takes that dance and invents a narrative. It says, this came before that, and then imagines a future where something else might follow. That imagination is your power and your prison. It gives you the ability to dream and plan and regret and worry. It gives you literature and science and history. But it also gives you fear of endings and sorrow for the past and anxiety for the future. It gives you the illusion that you are moving when maybe you are still. So what happens if the brain stops believing in time? What happens if the illusion fades? Does life lose meaning, or does it gain clarity? Do you fall into confusion, or rise into awareness? Do you stop becoming or start being fully for the proles? First time, some mystics and philosophers have said that the mind without time is the awakened mind, that to see beyond the veil of chronology is to touch eternity, to feel the eternal, now in which all things exist already and always, not as sequence, but as structure, not as story, but as song. And perhaps the brain in silence, without clocks, without calendars, remembers this song, remembers its true nature, not as a traveler through time, but as a witness to stillness. Perhaps the self you think is becoming is actually a constellation of moments, always there, and the brain is just learning to see them all at once like a flash of insight, like a memory you didn't know you had. The illusion of time gives rise to the self, but the end of time may give rise to the soul, not the soul in a religious sense, but in the sense of awareness that is not bound by timeline, or body, or thought, but simply is aware of being aware. And maybe that is what the brain is doing at its deepest level, not calculating, not recording, but awakening, not building time, but dissolving it, not measuring reality, but becoming it. So the next time you feel rushed, the next time you regret or hope or fear, remember that time is a story your mind is telling you, and you are allowed to pause, you are allowed to rewrite it, you are allowed to step outside the river and see the stillness beneath the flow, because even if time is not real, you are, and you are not late, you are already here. If time is not real, then what becomes of choice? If the future already exists, then is your decision already made? If all moments are equally real forever, then who are you? In the act of deciding, where does your freedom live? In a frozen universe where everything just is. We speak of free will as if it is the foundation of selfhood, the power to act, the power to change, the power to rewrite what would otherwise unfold without us. But in a block universe, in a timeless cosmos, there is nothing to rewrite, nothing to unfold, no gaps between what is and what could be. Everything that will happen has already happened, and you are simply experiencing the part where you realize it. This is not an abstract idea. It is a direct consequence of the physics. If time is a dimension, like space, and the universe is a four-dimensional structure, then every event already exists in its place. Your birth, your decisions, your regrets, your future. They are not waiting to occur. They are waiting to be observed. You do not create the next moment, you reveal it, like a sculptor removing clay that never belonged. And this raises the question, are you shaping your life, or just uncovering it? Are you choosing or following a path that was always there? Some philosophers call this view eternalism, the belief that past, present, and future are equally real. And in that view, the idea of free will becomes difficult because if your actions are already part of the structure, then there is no true alternative. You could not have done otherwise. You only believe you could have. That belief is part of the design too, a feature, not a flaw. And yet the feeling of choice is undeniable. You feel it when you hesitate, when you change your mind, when you stand at the crossroads and say this way, not that way. The sensation of agency, the weight of responsibility, the triumph of effort. These are not illusions, they are experiences, and even if they are part of a fixed block, they are no less meaningful. Perhaps the confusion lies in the definition of free will. We think it means the ability to alter the future, but maybe it means the ability to experience choice the way you experience color or sound, not because it changes the universe, but because it reveals you to yourself. Maybe free will is not about shaping reality, but participating in it as a conscious node of awareness, reflecting a fixed geometry through the lens of personal meaning. Even in physics, determinism is not absolute. Quantum mechanics introduces uncertainty, randomness, probabilities at the smallest scales. And some argue that this randomness restores freedom. But randomness is not choice. It is chance, and chance is not agency. True freedom is not the same as unpredictability. It is something else, something deeper, something tied to consciousness, not to chaos. So what if consciousness is the place where time appears to flow and free will appears to exist, not because the universe demands it, but because meaning does? Because the self is a story, and stories require conflict, uncertainty, decision even. If they are written beginning to end, they must still be lived page by page. Think of a novel already printed, already complete, the ending fixed, the characters unchanging. But to the reader, each moment feels alive, each choice feels real. You turn the page, not because it will surprise the author, but because it surprises you. The journey is yours. Even if the map was drawn long before, and maybe the universe is that kind of story already whole but still worth reading. In this view, free will is not the power to change the future. It is the experience of engaging with it. It is not the ability to alter the block, but the act of witnessing it from within. And in that witnessing, something sacred happens. You bring awareness to the structure. You light it up with presence. And in doing so, you transform it, not externally, but internally, not cosmically, but consciously. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is everything. Because even if the future is already there, you still must walk into it. Even if the decision is already made, you must still feel it, weigh it, live it. Even if time is an illusion, the experience of freedom is not. And that experience is what defines you. The fear that free will is an illusion comes from the belief that without it, life is empty. But what if life is full, not because it is open, but because it is conscious? What if meaning does not require freedom in the absolute sense, but in the lived sense? What if the illusion of choice is not a lie, but a lens through which the self becomes real? In dreams, you do not control the world, but you still act within it. In stories, you do not create the plot, but you still feel the choices of the characters in life. You may not steer the cosmos, but you still choose who to be in each unfolding moment. And that act of choosing, even inside a block universe, may be the most powerful thing of all, because it means you are not a puppet, not a prisoner, not a machine. You are an experiencer of structure, an artist of attention, a point of light in the frozen geometry of being. And through your awareness, the universe wakes up to itself, not by rewriting its laws, but by realizing its depths. So do you have free will in a timeless universe? Perhaps not in the way you imagined, not as escape, but as engagement, not as disruption, but as devotion. The devotion of being fully here, of saying yes to the moment, not because you control it, but because you honor it. And in that, yes, you find yourself again, not as a mover of time, but as a mirror of eternity. If time is not fundamental, then where does it come from? If the universe at its core is timeless, then how do we explain the rhythm, the direction, the structure we experience every day? Perhaps time is not built into reality. Perhaps it emerges, like heat, or pressure, or color, not a basic element, but a pattern, a property, a consequence. And one of the most astonishing ideas in modern physics is that time may emerge from entanglement. Entanglement is the strange connection that links quantum particles across space. No matter how far apart they are once entangled, their states become correlated. Measuring one affects the other instantly, as if they are part of the same system. Even when separated by light years, it defies common sense, but it works. And what some physicists are now suggesting is that this very phenomenon might give birth to space and time themselves, that the flow of time might arise from the spread of entanglement, like a ripple moving across the quantum sea. In this picture, the universe is not made of things but of relationships, events, connections. The fabric of reality is woven, not from matter but from information, and time is the way that information propagates across entangled systems. It is not a master clock, but a measure of how entangled a system becomes with its environment. Time emerges when things interact, when correlations spread, when possibilities collapse into outcomes. This idea is not science fiction. It is built into the equations of quantum mechanics in some interpretations. Like the Page-Wouters mechanism, time arises from entanglement. Within a closed system, there is no external clock, just subsystems, observing one another. And through that observation, through that mutual measurement, a sense of temporal evolution is born. Each part becomes a clock for the other. Each observer creates time by observing. So what does it mean to say that time emerges? It means that time is not an ingredient, but a product, not a foundation, but a feature like the smoothness of water made from chaotic molecules, or the wetness of rain born from clouds. And pressure time is what it feels like to be part of a vast entangled system unfolding through self-observation and shared information. If true, this changes everything. It means the past is not behind us, but encoded within the network of connections. It means the future is not waiting but entangled with the present, waiting to decohere. It means that change is not movement, and through time, but a shift in informational structure, a reconfiguration of relational data across the quantum web. And it suggests that without entanglement, there is no time in deep isolation, in perfect stillness. In a state of zero interaction, time would not pass because nothing would relate to anything else. And without relation, there is no difference. No entropy, no arrow, no flow. This view also helps explain why we experience a direction to time, even though the laws are time symmetric. Because entanglement spreads in one direction, because information disperses, because systems grow more entangled, not less. This creates an effective arrow, a pattern that feels like progress, but is really just the deepening of connection, the widening of the web. From this lens, memory becomes not a recording but an imprint of entanglement, a trace of interaction written into the structure of your brain and experience, becomes a kind of measurement, a moment of mutual definition between you and the play world where time is born in the act of attention. Could this be why time feels so real? Because it is being constructed in real time by consciousness. Could this be why we fear the end of time? Because we fear the end of relation, of interaction, of being part of the whole. And if time emerges from entanglement, what does that say about consciousness? Some theories suggest that consciousness itself may be a byproduct of entangled systems, a kind of temporal loop arising from the brain observing itself, creating the time, by measuring itself over and over, a feedback of awareness, birthing the sensation of flow and identity. Maybe time is not the container of consciousness, but the echo of it. Maybe you are not in time, but time is in you, not as an illusion, but as a construction, an emergent phenomenon, riding on the architecture of thought and attention. This also opens new doors to understanding the beginning of the universe, because if time emerges from entanglement, then before entanglement, there was no time, and the Big Bang may not have been a beginning in time, but a beginning of time, the moment when enough relational structure formed to give rise to change, to memory, to story. And if time is emergent, then perhaps it can emerge differently elsewhere. Perhaps there are pockets of the universe where time flows differently or not at all. Perhaps the arrow is reversed or fragmented or circular. Perhaps there are forms of consciousness that do not need time, that exist purely in the realm of relation without sequence, without history. What emerges is a picture of the universe not as a ticking clock, but as a breathing web, not a timeline, but a tapestry of connections. And in that web time is the hum, the rhythm, the shimmering of patterns dancing into coherence, and the deeper the entanglement, the deeper the time, the more connected you are, the more real the flow becomes. This is not cold abstraction. It is profoundly human, because our lives are defined by relationship, by shared moments, by mutual experience. And maybe that is what time really is. Not a line, but a bond, not a chain, but a thread weaving you into the whole. And perhaps this is why time feels sacred, because it is the signal of connection, the proof that we are not alone, the rhythm of entanglement echoing through the soul of the cosmos, saying you are here, you are part of this, you are changing and being changed. So, could time be born from entanglement? Perhaps it already is, perhaps it always was, and perhaps in every moment of shared presence, in every act of attention, in every memory, and every heartbeat, you are creating time one connection at a time. Long before physicists questioned time, mystics whispered its illusion in monasteries, in deserts. In the silence between breath, they spoke of eternity, not as an infinite line, but as a state beyond sequence, beyond memory, beyond becoming. They called it the eternal now, the ever-present moment, the timeless truth. And they reached it not with equations, but with stillness, with devotion, with the quiet dissolving of the self. Across cultures, this idea repeats like a rhythm. Sages in India spoke of Maya, the illusion of change. Buddhist monks taught that time was suffering and enlightenment, the release from its grip. Christian mystics entered ecstatic states where time vanished and only presence remained. Indigenous shamans journeyed beyond the clock into realms where past and future folded into a single vision of wholeness. These were not metaphors, they were direct experiences. And now, modern science is beginning to echo what was once called sacred. Psychedelics open that doorway again. Chemicals like psilocybin, DMT, LSD disrupt the brain's default networks, and in doing so, they break the illusion of time. Users describe moments stretching into eternity or collapsing into flashes of pure being. They report visiting dimensions where everything happens at once, where lifetimes unfold in minutes, where the boundaries between self and cosmos dissolve. Time becomes space, space becomes thought, and thought becomes light. These experiences often leave lasting transformations, not because they distort time, but because they reveal its artificial nature. In the absence of time, people feel more real, not less, more themselves than ever before. They describe timeless love, timeless truth, timeless presence, as if the stripping away of chronology reveals something deeper, something more honest than the tick of a second hand. Neurologically, what happens is astonishing. Brain scans show reduced activity in the default mode network, the part responsible for self-reference and narrative construction. This network is deeply tied to our sense of time, to our ability to place ourselves on a timeline. When it quiets, the sense of linear progression collapses, and what remains is raw awareness, not tied to a before or after, but floating in an ocean of now. Near-death experiences often report the same thing. People who have clinically died and come back tell of stepping outside of time, watching their life unfold in a single flash or a panoramic whole. Some speak of entering a place where time does not pass, where all moments exist simultaneously, filled with light and knowledge and peace. Not just survival, but revelation, as if death itself unlocks the curtain between temporal illusion and eternal structure. Skeptics might call this brain chemistry or hallucination, but that does not erase the consistency across thousands of testimonies, and it does not explain why these experiences are often life-changing. They return with a new relationship to time, less fear, less hurry, more presence, more depth, as if they have glimpsed the truth beneath the ticking. And perhaps the boundary between physics and mysticism is not a wall, but a mirror, both trying to describe the same truth in different languages, one with symbols, the other with silence. Perhaps the timeless realm is not fantasy, but the deeper layer of being the level where the block universe is not just geometry, but music, where your soul is not just an emergent pattern, but a note sustained across the whole of spacetime. This is not to reject science, but to expand it, to recognize that consciousness is not separate from the cosmos, that experience is data, and that altered states may be tools, not distractions. We are taught to believe that only what can be measured is real, but what if the very act of measurement is what creates the illusion of time? What if the deepest truths are not clocked, but felt, not stored, but lived? The overlap is growing. Physicists like Roger Penrose explore consciousness and quantum gravity. Neuroscientists investigate meditation and brainwave states. Psychologists study the healing power of timeless awareness. The doors are opening, and what they reveal is humbling. We are more than machines. We are mysteries, and time is not our cage, it is our canvas. In mystical experience, in psychedelic journeys, in the spaces between life and death, we touch something that does not move, something that does not age, something that is always already there. And in that stillness, we realize that the truth of the universe is not motion, but meaning, not flow, but presence, not time, but timelessness. And what does this mean for your life? It means that urgency is not sacred. It means that peace is not waiting. It means that you are not behind. You are not late. You are not running out of time. You are already within the whole already, complete, already real. It means that the practice is not escape, but return, not progress, but presence, not chasing the future, but honoring the eternal now. So whether through silence or science, through breath or molecule, through prayer or physics, the path is the same. The path is inward and beyond, and what waits there is not time but truth. What if time doesn't exist? What if all you've ever known about beginnings and endings, about past and future, about cause and effect was only a shadow, a story, a beautiful necessary illusion? What if every moment you've lived and every moment you've yet to live is not waiting or gone, but simply there, timeless, unchanging, real forever? We have spent this journey diving through equations, through paradoxes, through black holes and neural networks and sacred silence. We've unraveled the clock tick by tick and found not machinery but mystery, not rules, but questions we've asked: where time goes when it dies, and how it might be born from nothing. We've seen it vanish at the heart of a singularity and emerge in the shimmer between entangled particles. We've watched it dissolve in psychedelic visions and in the eyes of those who nearly left this world and came back whispering that everything happens all at once. So now here we are, the end of this story, or perhaps just another moment in the block, another still frame among many. This isn't a conclusion, because in a timeless universe there are none. There is no last chapter, no final word, only a shift in perception, another turn of the head, another sliver of the whole revealed. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the truth was never about time, but about attention, not about duration, but depth, not about how long you live, but how fully you meet each breath. Because if time is not real, then the only thing that ever mattered was presence. The only thing that was ever yours was now. Not now as a point on a timeline, but now as a cathedral, a gateway, a miracle, happening endlessly forever. You are not falling through time. You are illuminating it, not moving forward, but lighting up one moment after another, as your consciousness scans the block, bringing it to life with awareness. And in that light, there is meaning, there is purpose, not because you shape the future, but because you bear witness to the present, not because you command the universe, but because you feel it, because you ask, because you care. If time does not exist, then neither does loss. The ones you've loved are still there. The moments you've cherished are still shining, untouched, unspoiled, still written into the fabric of reality like constellations that never fade, only shift. Out of view, if time does not exist, then regret softens, and hope becomes unnecessary, not because nothing matters, but because everything already does. and always has? What if this was never about time at all? What if it was about being awake, about realizing that the clock was never the truth, only the invitation? And what it invited you to was this: to be here, to be still, to be alive in a universe that never began and will never end, but which pulses with beauty and awareness and the ache of mystery. You are not late, you are not early, you are not behind or ahead. You are exactly where you are, and that is enough, not because of destiny, but because of presence, not because it was meant to be, but because it is, and being is enough. The question is no longer what will happen or what has happened. The question is, can you feel this moment as it is? Can you let go of the need to control the timeline, to fix the past, to rush the future, and instead rest in the truth that you are not a character on a path, but a light in a sculpture, illuminating a piece of eternity, one sacred frame at a time? What if time doesn't exist? Then you are not a wave crashing. You are the ocean, reflecting the sky, and you were never running out of time. You were always overflowing with it. You were never racing the clock. You were the stillness that made the ticking possible. You were never temporary, only distracted. So, take a breath, not to pass a second, but to feel the miracle of breath itself. Take a moment not to mark time, but to step outside it, and remember that you are not just in the universe, you are of it. And the universe is not moving, it is being, and so are you. And in this being, in this vast unmoving, now you are free. Free from the fear of endings, free from the pressure of beginnings, free from the illusion that anything is missing because nothing ever was. All is now, all is always, all is. And so are you.